Is it the spirit of Dracula? No. Is it the spirit of Frankenstein? No. What spirit is it? It's the spirit of the wolf. And here's the start of the show.
Thank you. Hello, I am Andrew Waldman, but we won't be using that name very often. You can call me Wolf, and this is Spirit of the Wolf. You may remember from a few years back, I had a YouTube show called Flick Check with Andrew Waldman, where I did my best Conan O'Brien impression and tried to review movies with my sidekick, Discount Paul Schaefer. Well, this show is not that.
I was wondering why I didn't get a call sheet. So you don't need me for this show?
How often was the cast of Cheers on Frasier?
Maybe once a season someone would pop in.
Then I guess I'll see you during Sweeps Week. This isn't Flick Check anymore. This is something new. Something more fun, something more casual, something where I get to be more myself, something where I get to wear pretty neat Hawaiian shirts from Kohl's, and hopefully a lot less of whatever this was.
Jamie Foxx's Electro. I loved it. I absolutely loved Jamie Foxx's Electro. Perfect casting.
Guys, we all say things that we regret in college. I maintain that Amazing Spider-Man 2 was not as bad as everyone thought it was, but yikes. Alright, let's move on. So why do we call this Spirit of the Wolf? Well, let's go to the bar and find out. Each week, I'm going to show you a new drink. Some from a can, some assembly required. And today, we're going to talk about my favorite cocktail, the Moscow Mule. Now, before we begin, disclaimer, I'm not a bartender. I don't even know what the hell this thing's called. I'm just a guy who watched a lot of Masterclass during quarantine and whose friends got him this New York Times book of cocktails for his birthday. So, what you're about to see is not performed by a trained professional, and you can try this at home. So for a Moscow Mule, you're going to need the following items. You're going to need 2 limes, a copper mug, ginger beer, vodka, and ice. So why a copper mug? Well, according to Google, in the 40s, Jack Morgan invented the Moscow Mule, and his girlfriend at the time owned a copper factory. So, you're stealing supplies from home, you get a copper mug, he puts it in there, he likes the taste, and he loves the marketing. His beverage now automatically has a symbol to go with it. If there's somebody that gets marketing, it's somebody that names himself Wolf. Another reason is because, according to science, it keeps the beverage colder, longer, something like that. I don't know, that's Bill Nye. We take our 2 limes, we chop them in half carefully. Make sure they're washed first. You know, who knows what else is touching the limes in the grocery store, especially after 2020. Now, for this part here, we cut a little piece off. Nice little ring here. Set that to the side, that'll become important later. Check off some lime, if you will. Next, we take our chopped limes and we put them in this handy dandy lime press that I got from big corporate big box store. Shut up, I like gadgets. I used to do this by hand, but this way you get a lot more lime juice out of there. And they look like little pancakes when they're done. From here, we add our ice. I usually do about 8 cubes. You add the ice before you add the rest of the liquid because it's going to help you fill up the mug and really make you think about how much of each of these you're going to want in there. Next, we add our vodka. Usually I use Tito's, today I'm using Kettle One. Bob's your uncle, whatever vodka you prefer. Now to answer your question, no, a Moscow Mule does not need vodka. But if you use something else, it's not a Moscow Mule. Like, if you use Irish whiskey like Jameson, that would be a Celtic Mule. So on and so forth. But, you know, commonly vodka. Sometimes I use gin. I don't have a clever name for that. Generally, about 2 ounces of vodka is going to do it. Don't spill it on your new mat like I did. If you're like really craving that punch, I can do about 3 ounces. But today, let's go with 2. And finally, we're going to add ginger beer. Now, use whatever ginger beer you want. The one with the otter on it, Saranac, anything really works for this. I prefer a spicier ginger beer. That's why I use Maine Root Spicy. It adds a bolder flavor. You know, for the same reason I don't go to Dunkin' Donuts for coffee, I don't really like a sweet ginger beer. I like something a little bit more bold and flavorful. Nothing against it, except Dunkin' Donuts. I hate Dunkin' Donuts. And then you're gonna fill it up to the top. Usually about half to 2/3 of a bottle will do it. And we're gonna stir. Of course we are. And to top it off, we use Chekhov's lime wedge from before. And voila, a Moscow Mule. The lime wedge on the side is optional. It's really just there for decoration. But since I'm trying to show off for my YouTube viewers, here we are. As my Papa Tom always said, sláinte.
Hello, this is RJ City. I don't know why, but you're watching Spirit of the Wolf.
Thanks, RJ. So as we enjoy our excellent beverage choice, today we are going to discuss Alf. Alf is a 1986 NBC sitcom about an alien from the planet Melmac who crash lands in Southern California and lives with a fairly typical suburban family. Basically, anytime something is set in the 1980s, the writers of the props department usually make some sort of reference to Alf or they dress it in, so you've definitely at least heard the name. Let's just talk about the pilot episode today, because I feel like I'm going to go to the Alf well pretty often on this show. So it starts with social worker Willie Tanner and his wife Kate in the garage listening to radio signals on their shortwave. Typical romantic Saturday night. When they pick up a signal that starts beeping faster and faster, and their kids run to the garage, and there's shaking all over the house. Mom, Dad, what's going on? And suddenly, boom! A spaceship crashes into their garage. How or why none of the neighbors hear or see any of this, or no one comes over and sees what's going on, they never really explain why. I guess the spaceship must have been set on vibrate or whatever. So Willie does what anyone would do in this situation. He picks up the alien that's inside the spaceship and brings it into his house. They all start saying, "What do we do? What is this thing?" And Brian calls it an alien. Because, of course. And Willie says, and I quote, "Brian's right, it's an Alf." Which he explains means alien life form. Even though Brian didn't say that it was an Alf. Whatever, we gotta get to the title somehow. Then Brian says, "Can Alf stay in my room?" In one fell swoop, this little brat has not only given this thing a name, he's invited it to stay in their goddamn house. We don't waste time on Alf. They all start to argue, the mom doesn't want it in there, blah blah blah, and then Alf wakes up and says, "Hey, how about fixing my ship?" They take like 5 seconds to process this thing not only talks but speaks English, and they say, "Okay, sure, we can fix your ship." At no point do they say, "Hey, what's your name, pal?" They just kind of offer him some food because, he's hungry, and he says, "Can I eat your cat?" No. Then he says, "Well, how about a cat food can?" Because, that's obviously the same thing. Kate says, "Sure, a dented one." The Tanner family obviously sorts all their cat food cans by whether they're dented or not. So Alf gets up and walks to the kitchen. And this is where I need to pause to talk about how Alf is made. When the show was on the air, NBC refused to acknowledge that Alf was anything other than an actual alien. He was on talk shows, he was the middle square in Hollywood Squares for a while, but in reality, he's a puppet, 95% of the time. He'd pop up the trap doors, the creator of the show, Paul Fusco, would use it one hand to operate the mouth, the other to operate the arm, there'd be another puppeteer operating the arm, and he would voice the alien live. As you can imagine, this led to really long days of frustration. The cast hated it because not only did they have to keep pausing so the alien could move around the room, the alien got all the best lines. No one else really got to be funny on this show. Now, I mentioned that Alf gets up and walks to the kitchen. Whenever Alf was walking around, he was played by a dwarf actor in a costume named Michu Meszaros. Don't get me wrong, incredible actor, great at what he did. You could look up all his other work. It's just that the costume and the puppet didn't look anything alike. It's kind of like when you saw William Shatner and then you saw his stunt double. It's very obvious that they're trying to, mask how they do it. So, eventually, they just got tired. They realized it wasn't working. You could tell the difference. And by the end of the first season, they stopped using the Alf costume. So back to the show. Alf goes into the kitchen to eat his dented can, but not before he makes his first pass at trying to eat the family cat, Lucky. Thus, a running gag and a very specific phobia for younger viewers is born. The next morning, Alf wakes up in bed right next to Kate, and they both scream, and Alf runs into the bathroom where Willie's shaving, and rather than get pissed off that this 3-foot alien was just in bed with his wife, he goes into this whole 1980s sitcom lecture about being considerate. If you're gonna live with us, blah, blah, blah. Okay, also maybe mention, don't be in bed with my wife, man. So Willie goes back to shaving, and he says, hey, stay away from the window. We have a very nosy neighbor named Mrs. Achmonic, who I guess, regularly watches people through the bathroom window. But it's not creepy, because it's a sitcom. Sure enough, Alf goes to the window, and Mrs. Peeping Tom is there and sees him. And she's like, Trevor, is there a cross between a kangaroo and an aardvark? Okay. So then Mr. Peeping Tom comes over to the window to see what his wife's seeing, and of course Alf runs away. Classic. Ah, Raquel, you're being nuts. There's nothing there. And then Alf comes back to the window after he walks away, and he's holding his towel. He's like, nah, 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 nah. Just cold. In the next scene, we find Alf and Willie in the garage while Willie's trying to fix Alf's spaceship. What's Alf doing? He's trying to win concert tickets to Bruce Springsteen with the daughter Lynn. In the last scene, he didn't know how a toilet worked, but here we go. We're trying to see the boss in concert. In the next episode, there's like a dozen specific references to Psycho, so clearly he's found Wikipedia by now. So Alf gets bored not helping, Willie fix the spaceship, so he decides, I'm going to go into the house and be a bad influence on children. And he's like, I'm hungry. Let's get something else from the kitchen, Brian. And they both start walking towards the kitchen, and the mom's like, hey, don't have any soda before dinner. We won't. So they walk into the kitchen, and then all of a sudden you hear, what was that? I said no soda. And they both come back in. Oh, don't worry, it's not soda, it's beer. Oh, okay. Nope. Mom flips her and she's like, hey, this isn't how we do things on Earth. I don't know where you came from or blah, blah, blah. And Alf takes this time to say, oh, I'm from Melmac, but it exploded. I can't go home. Pretty great card to play when you just got caught giving beer to kids, but whatever. And then right now there's a knock on the door. Oh, who's this? Oh, it's a member of the Alien Task Force, because, Mrs. Achmonic just happens to have them on speed dial for some reason. Willie comes in and he says, oh, they didn't teach me how to fix alien spaceships in social worker school. I can't help you. So now it's up to Mom. Do we turn over this alien, or do we, keep it in our house for 4 seasons and let it screw with our lives? So Kate opens the door, and this guy's like, hey, somebody told us you might have an alien. And Kate's like, well, what would you do to it if we did? And rather than use that statement as probable cause to search the house, this guy's like, oh, we'd dissect it, we'd see how it would handle to extreme heat, ice cold, and, I quote, we'd tear out its toenails. Yikes. So she's just like, nope, no aliens here, and she closes the door. And Alf gets to stay. What follows is 4 years of quippy pop culture one-liners and plots devoid of any and all logic. But it's great fun and pretty laughable if you don't want to think too hard about something before it all falls apart. So that's Alf, and probably not the last time I'm going to talk about Alf. And as I finish my beverage, I want to thank you all for joining me. Tune in next time, where I think I might try to convince you that professional wrestling is real and not a waste of time for a grown adult to watch. Thanks for raising a glass with me, and of course, happy birthday, Nick Charlick.